Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I work in a small souvenir shop in a park. It's quite remote, so it takes around 5 minutes to access via a tractor and trailer ride, and about 10 minutes walking. Every day, I have to close at 3 p.m. due to company rules, so I can't change it. One day, about an hour before closing, a couple came to my shop and grabbed a few snacks for themselves. As they paid, they asked what time I was closing. I said 3 p.m. They thanked me and carried on their way. I was a bit confused as to why they asked, since there are more than 3 signs at the entrance to the park and on my shop explaining the closing time. Additionally, the tractor driver announces our opening hours to everyone who rides the tractor and trailer. But I shrugged it off, assuming they might not have been paying attention. As I was starting to close with everything packed away and turned off, the couple came back again. It's important to mention the woman looked like a young mother who might cause some trouble. She bought a few ice creams and again asked me when I was shutting. I said in 4 minutes. She rolled her eyes and sighed. She said, "Well, can't you just stay open a few extra minutes? My kids are waiting to come down on the tractor and have been waiting for ages. The driver keeps forgetting them. They're only 5 and 7. I tried not to act shocked that she was leaving her young kids alone in a busy park, but I calmly explained to her that we were closing and there was literally nothing I could do. I could not have kept open even if I wanted to. She did not like this answer. The dad started rolling his eyes, asking if I could stay open just another 30 minutes so his kids could have a look around and buy some things. I said no again. They then intentionally started taking their time to buy things, so I carried on packing up around them. By the time they were done deciding, all I had to do was turn the till off. As soon as I put their things through, they demanded my radio so they could ask the tractor driver to make me stay open. He couldn't do anything. They stormed off to get the tractor back to the entrance of the park, yelling at the tractor driver to be quick so they could bring their kids down. I closed the till and the door faster than I ever had before. When the tractor returned, the parents were yelling, wondering why the shop had shut down. The tractor driver said he got an earful from the parents when he suggested they just go to the main shop in the park instead of mine. It sells literally the same things. Entitled parents. I hope not to meet them again. Last year in May, we all got into an argument over our dog chewing on a table that was given to us by my in-laws. That spiraled into accusations that we don't do anything right and so on. I made the comment to them that they never care about my feelings, and gave examples. One being Christmas of 2022. I wanted it to be just my husband, myself, and our daughter. My husband was deployed the year before, so it would have been our first Christmas together as a family of 3. My dad had just died, and my mother-in-law made it out to everyone that they weren't welcome just because they couldn't be here on Christmas Day. They live 7 hours away, and I wanted it to be just the 3 of us. They stayed a whole week before Christmas, but since it wasn't on Christmas Day, she felt she wasn't welcome. My mother-in-law yelled at me. My son was gone for a year, and my dad died. Her dad passed away in 2019. I quietly responded, "My dad died too," and she yelled back, "Yeah, but mine was my life." For a year, I was told I took that the wrong way. Fast forward to this year in April. They came down because my father-in-law's mom was not doing well. We all got into another big fight for not wanting our 2-year-old to sleep in a hotel bed with them. My mother-in-law called my husband for days, criticizing me. She said, "I know in her heart of hearts she never wanted us to have a relationship with our grandchild." She added, "When she has another baby, she'll keep that one from us," and accused me of being the reason he never went to see his grandma in the nursing home. She also said I was inconsiderate for not telling my father-in-law that I was sorry for his loss. The first day I actually got to see them and spend time with them was the day after my father-in-law's mom passed away. I didn't know how to approach him about it, and we were out most of the day. I didn't want to upset him in public and talk about it because nobody was bringing it up. I made them cookies to try to lighten up the mood, and bought him an angel as my way of saying I was sorry for what he was going through. As soon as they walked into our house, they were upset that there was puppy pee on the floor and dishes in the sink. They felt unwelcome and wanted to go to a hotel, taking our 2-year-old daughter with them. We said no, and that's when the fighting began. As soon as they got back home, a 7-hour drive, she kept calling my husband to criticize me. As for the claim that it was my fault my husband never went to see his grandma, I always went with him when he asked me to. It was hard for him because she had dementia and would always beg him to get her out of there. So blaming me was unfair. One of the last times she called to criticize me, my husband tried to defend me regarding what she said a year ago about my dad. She then said, "I was just explaining why I needed Christmas with my son and his daughter." When my husband tried to defend me on that comment, she said, "Well, I actually had a relationship with mine," in a snarky way. That did it for me. I was tired of the gaslighting, the lies and excuses, the criticism over a disagreement involving my daughter, and the disrespect for my feelings about losing my dad. She's always the victim, and I don't want to fuel that by allowing her to be around my daughter after how she's treated not only me but my husband too. He still does not talk to her either. She has yet to apologize and is still making excuses and blaming me for things unrelated to our initial fight. She keeps changing her story about why she's hurt and can never give us a real reason for how it's our fault. She's just trying to play the victim, and I can't stand it. As for my husband and his dad, they have made up. In fact, his dad is divorcing his mom and wants to move down here. So I don't know if she should be allowed at my daughter's party in August. I only get 1/3 birthday with my daughter, and I don't want any drama. What should I do or say to her if she asks my husband to be invited? I'm in a tough spot with my parents. They offered me their second home at half the market rate, which I accepted and asked them to vacate the previous tenant. However, they often insult me and my Chinese wife, with my mom making offensive remarks about her culture, and my dad belittling me, telling me without them I'd starve to death despite my successful career. The house needs new flooring, and they expect me to cover the cost. Despite their financial help, they still treat me like a teenager, offering unsolicited advice and insults. After a recent fight where my dad called me a prepubescent fool, and my mom went on an offensive rant, I left the property without helping them repaint it. I told them I'm not moving in, and they can do what they want with the house. I said this with a lot of anger and harsh language. My therapist told me that as an adult, you have a mom and dad, not parents, because you're responsible for yourself. When I said that to my parents, they both became very upset, accusing me of being brainwashed and not loving them. It feels like they always want me to live their way, and I only have value to them if I conform to their expectations. Update: I'm 34 years old and living with my wife in our apartment. Growing up, I didn't realize I was being neglected and abused. But after much reflection and therapy, I've come to the realization that my parents are to blame for many of my mental health issues. It started when I was a child, and my parents left me with my grandmother when I was a few months old, so they could work abroad for 4 years. I believe both my parents have unaddressed mental illnesses. My dad exhibits all the traits of someone with narcissistic personality disorder, and my mom shows signs of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Personally, I've been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Although both my parents believe mental illnesses are a hoax created by pharmaceutical companies, my father often gives unsolicited advice, delivered through yelling and calling me and anyone he disapproves of a loser. My mother often yells about every little thing. If there are breadcrumbs on the floor, it's the same as covering the whole floor in mud, and she will explode with rage. She believes hitting and yelling are the best ways to get her point across. I feel like my dad has never received the attention he craves from my mom because she is incapable of showing affection. Both my parents are ardent supporters of a particular political figure, and when they found out I voted for his opponent, they were so furious they threatened me and refused to speak to me for a while. This was initiated by my mom. My dad's go-to threat was that he would break things and hit me if I didn't comply with him, or if I showed any signs of disrespect. One time he beat me up because I refused to take his dirty plate to the sink. Another time, he came home and poured my soup down the drain, saying that soup is for poor people and I wouldn't eat it. When my mom couldn't find work, he constantly berated her for being lazy and taking advantage of him despite her efforts to find a job. This behavior has not changed. Even as a 34-year-old adult, when I last saw them, he threatened my mom that he would hit her if she didn't stop interrupting him. Both my parents insist that since they are parents, they deserve the utmost respect and will never steer me wrong because they have good intentions. When I tried to set boundaries with them, they took it as an offense, saying I'm ungrateful and don't love them. They refused to pay for my college because they said I was too lazy and wouldn't try hard without pressure, yet they completely dismissed my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnosis. They only seem to care about me if they can mold me into their image. They're always trying to tell me how to live my life and never bother to see me as an individual, yet they keep insisting they do it out of love. I guess they think what they do is helping me because they believe their intentions are good. I've told them multiple times I don't want kids, and they respond with threats, saying, "Why are we working hard for you? You know everything we've worked for you're eventually going to have. We're not paying for you to live. You need to have a family." My 40 meters, almost 4-year-old daughter loves grocery shopping with me, especially if we get one of those race car grocery carts. If it's a slow time at the store, I take her to the deli where there is a wide open space in the corner and spin a circle with the cart. She loves it. It usually gathers smiles in the rare case someone is nearby. It's just a dad having fun with his daughter, right? Just yesterday, after doing a single spin, we went on our way when an older lady, I'd say early 70s, came towards us shaking her head and glaring. I gave her a perplexed look in response to her scowl, and she muttered something about having absolutely no respect for public spaces. I responded, "Sorry, ma'am, I was just having fun with my child. Sorry to have offended you. Have a nice day." I thought that was that and was happy to move on, but she continued, "Shame on you for teaching your child such poor manners. I taught my children how to behave in public." Me. "Clearly that's a lesson you didn't bother to learn yourself. I wonder how well they turned out." She muttered something about them being perfect. My almost 4-year-old is extremely perceptive and sensitive, and asked if she had done something wrong. I then explained as loudly as I could. Me. "Absolutely not, honey. That's just a very grumpy old bully," she angrily responded. "I am not grumpy, I just want to be left alone." Me. With my stern face. "No, well, you certainly are a bully then. And if you want to be left alone, I strongly suggest you start minding your own business. You taught your children to behave in stores? I'm teaching mine to stand up to bullies like you. Thank you for this perfect teaching moment." She finally caught the hint to stop and moved along, still muttering and shaking her head. Petty revenge commenced. Twice more we encountered her in the other aisles, and I made sure to overdo the race car theme but would abruptly stop when we got near her, saying loudly to my daughter, "Careful now, honey. We don't want to anger the fun police." My daughter played along perfectly. As fate would have it, we were approaching the checkout at nearly the same time. We got there first, but I magnanimously allowed her in front of us to be first in line at the solitary man checkout, knowing she would complain, and she did not disappoint. She immediately started to explain to the cashier that she was harassed by me and my daughter this whole time, and how we were disrupting the whole store. The cashier cautiously looked over at me, and I just gave a totally confused shrug. I was still in my formal work clothes, suit and tie, and my daughter was wearing her adorable puffy fairy skirt, picture-perfect innocence. Having obviously seen me let the lady in front of us in line, the cashier gave me an apologetic smile, and just nodded and smiled, humoring Karen. She must have tried complaining further at customer service because we were now leaving at the same time, despite our full grocery cart and a child insisting on helping with the bagging. Once outside, I made sure to drag race that cart past her as loud and obnoxiously as I could, and my daughter squealed in delight. I didn't even bother looking back at that crusty old woman. She ruined my shopping outing. I hope I ruined her entire day. I do feel bad for people that are this desperately miserable, but I also have zero patience for them taking it out on other people just trying to enjoy a sliver of joy in their day. I think if enough of us consistently confront people like this, they might just learn to keep their mouths shut and their poor attitudes to themselves. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Many years ago, I worked in aged care as a personal care assistant. This position was the lowest rung of the nursing staff, basically responsible for all the physical labor such as showering residents, assisting them to go to the toilet, getting them in and out of bed, and other similar tasks. I loved my job. I genuinely did. For a while, I worked at an agency going from place to place before being poached by a specific nursing home, which is where the malicious compliance takes place. I had been working there for about a month, doing 4 days a week, all afternoons, from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. 2 of those afternoons were back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. This is where the other nurse comes into play. Every second Wednesday, without fail, she would call in about 20 minutes before her shift. The 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. overnight shift was due to begin, leaving no time to get agency staff in to take over. I could wait until they arrived, but by the time they got there, it would likely be after 12, and my trains home would not be running. So, in the end, I took on a double shift from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m., leaving me tired mentally and physically. Trying to get home on a packed morning rush hour train was not much fun. However, given the other option was to leave my residents without proper care, and that would never ever happen. This meant that by the time I got home, it was around 9:30 a.m. I couldn't get immediately to sleep due to needing to eat, shower, and do the plethora of tasks needed before going to bed for the day. I wasn't able to get to sleep until around 12:30, and my train to work left at 1 p.m. This was obviously untenable, and after trying to do a double followed by a regular shift sans sleep a few times, I realized I was becoming a danger to my residents, my fellow staff members, and myself due to not being able to maintain concentration. In the end, I told my registered nurse that on the Thursdays after a double, I would not be able to do my shift for fear of someone getting hurt. This could open the nursing home and myself to potential legal trouble, not to mention someone suffering because of my choices. This had been happening for about 6 months when I got called up to the office of the owner. She promptly sat me down and berated me for taking every second Thursday off and not being a team player. I tried to explain why I was taking those Thursdays off, but she would not listen. In the end, I walked out with a write-up and a threat of termination if this behavior continued. Fast forward to the next Wednesday when, as usual, the other nurse called in 20 minutes before her shift started saying she couldn't make it. This left us a nurse down for the night, so the only person on for that entire shift would be a registered nurse. You can't lift or assist people with only one person without using a hoist, and even then, you are meant to have 2 people for safety reasons. The nurse in charge of afternoons rolled her eyes after the call and said, "Looks like you are doing another double, bearded guy." I replied, "I can't, and since staying until agency staff gets here is not an option since I wouldn't be able to get home, I suggest you call the owner and see what she recommends. If she needs me to stay, I will, but only if she gives me the direction herself and then confirms it with you." After 10 minutes, the owner hadn't answered any attempts to call, and I said, "Sorry, I have to leave." The registered nurse for the night shift began to get angry, to which I responded, "I will get fired if I stay here and then need to take tomorrow off, or someone could get harmed if I stay and then work. Neither of these is a great outcome, so I have to go." I knew they were never going to be able to get agency staff on such short notice. Even by the slimmest of chances they could find someone, it would be several hours between registering the request and someone showing up. So I walked out the door and hung around the corner for half an hour, knowing I would get a call sooner rather than later. I needed to be close by to get back and ensure my residents got the care they needed overnight and had my smiling face to wake up to in the morning, especially for the 3 people who loved early morning showers. The call came, I returned, and 2 nights later, I got a call from the owner who authorized me to work doubles as needed and take the next day off for safety reasons. As far as I know, the nurse who made the late call-ins was still working there when I left a year later. In the end, my residents got the care they deserved, and I got some sleep after working 15 hours straight. Hello, I'm back again. This time, this isn't the same family from the pool party story. This is a completely different family. Also, I apologize for what is probably another long post. So, this was back in 2018. I was in the 5th grade and got invited to my best friend's birthday party. We will call her Vicky. Vicky and I are no longer friends and probably never will be again. Some context. We had a falling out because I called out Vicky's homophobia and racism. She used very offensive slurs against the LGBTQ+ community and slurs offensive to Black people, Asian people, Mexican people, and more. I was very excited to go to Vicky's house. She and I had been friends for about 4 to 5 years, so this party was a significant milestone for us. I arrived at the party to hear karaoke from our friend group's favorite movie. Vicky and another girl were singing the intro to Disney's Descendants. Vicky's mom told me to drop my bag at the front door. I grabbed my iPad and asked for the Wi-Fi password so I could keep in contact with my family. At that time, I was very connected with my parents and would text and call them updates when I wasn't home. However, Vicky's mom, who I'll refer to as the new entitled mom, New M, said no. When I explained why I needed the password, she harshly told me no again. She said if I wanted to leave, I needed permission to use the house phone to contact my parents. I didn't know my parents' number by heart and needed to have New M next to me during the call. After about 30 to 40 minutes of singing, we got bored and were still waiting for food to arrive. I had been there for about 40 minutes while the others had been there for 2 hours. I still don't know what had been going on for those 2 hours, but I'm glad my mom's aunt was pulling and braiding my hair, cornrows by the way. Finally, Vicky's dad came home with the food and drinks. Before this, New M told us we were not to have snacks or drinks beforehand. Most of the girls were starving and ran towards the pizza. Some of them hadn't eaten before showing up and had been there since around 3 p.m. while I arrived at 5 p.m. By 6 p.m., we had cleared out 2 or 3 boxes of pizza. New M was mad that we ate so much and stormed out of the house. Vicky said she was probably going to pick up her brothers from basketball. There were 5 pizzas and about 8 or 10 girls at the party. I grabbed my iPad to play some Wi-Fi-less games with the other girls while we waited for the next part of the party. I asked Vicky if she knew the Wi-Fi password, but she didn't. New M claimed her children were terrible, so they weren't allowed to know the Wi-Fi password, and had a 3-hour time limit on their shared iPad. When New M entered the house without her sons, I wasn't sure where she had been. Vicky begged her mom to download a new game called Gotcha Studio. It was strange, because when Vicky asked for the app, her mom spoke to her in a sweet tone. Then afterward, she almost yelled at everyone else harshly. After Vicky got the app and played for 5 minutes, her mom requested the iPad back. Vicky trusted her mom and gave it back, but she didn't get the iPad back until almost the end of the sleepover party. After the iPad was taken from Vicky, she instructed us to go to the kitchen and start making her birthday cake. We had to make a giant peppermint brownie cake. Even though she was told to sit on the couch and stare at the blank TV, she joined us out of boredom. Her mom told her to relax, but since she had passed her screen time limit, she couldn't watch TV for the rest of the day. Once her dad came inside from chasing chickens for a few eggs, he asked where her brothers were. After finding out her mom hadn't picked them up, he left to get them. When Vicky's dad came back to see a finished brownie ready to be baked, he said, "Oh, I'm glad you used those old candy canes. They've been sitting out since 2016. I was grossed out, but they seemed fine, so I wasn't sure if he was joking. Something that kept happening was that I would get a soda, take a few sips, and somebody would move it. I found out the next day it was Vicky's brothers. I had to keep getting multiple sodas because they would move them next to theirs and the other girls' sodas. I opened about 4 or 5 sodas, not finishing any because the boys were drinking from the random sodas. I found that very unsanitary, so I stopped getting new ones. We found out there was no more icing, so we just had plain brownies, which I was fine with. When we cut the brownie, I was handed the smallest piece by New M. Everyone got a small piece, but mine was the smallest due to my misbehavior. What did I do wrong? I drank 4 to 5 sodas. Because of this, I didn't need any more sugar. By this point, most of the girls had left before we could open gifts. I suspect some of them called for their parents to pick them up. I know 1 or 2 girls had their own phones. I didn't know my parents' phone number, so I couldn't call no matter how much I wanted to leave. So, now it was only about 3 or 4 girls left at the party. It was around 7:05 p.m., and we went outside to play on Vicky's playground and get ready to hit the piñata. We were excited, and Vicky asked her mom to be outside and record her and her friends hitting the piñata. New M agreed but said she would take a quick shower first. We waited until almost 9 p.m. for her to return. New M finally came back when it was dark outside. It wasn't too dark, but dark enough to question why we were still outside instead of getting ready for dinner and bed. We hit the piñata and grabbed candy. New M didn't like that we all got huge bags full while her son's bags weren't as big. Her sons had big bags full of candy, just not as much as some of us. New M made us give 2 big handfuls of our candies to her boys. The boys were in the 3rd and 2nd grades. They were happy with what they had and didn't care if they got more. We were unhappy but gave them our candies. We went inside to open presents, but New M insisted we open only 3 presents before going to see what her grandparents got her. Vicky opened the presents from the remaining girls. Then the 2 girls left because their parents came to pick them up. That left me and Andrea. She's not too important to the story, but it's nice to give her a name. Now it was time for the final gift of the night. Vicky, Andrea, Vicky's dad, her brother and I got into the van and drove 15 to 20 minutes out of town. I asked before leaving if they could call my parents and tell them where I was going, but I was told no, nobody in the car other than Vicky's dad knew where we were going. Something that made me very uncomfortable was that I was given a flashlight because it would be dark by the time we arrived. I accidentally turned on the flashlight, and it hit the ceiling of the van. Vicky's dad told me not to do it again, which was reasonable. He then joked, "Don't do it again because you'll blind the driver and we'll crash," and proceeded to swerve the car, almost crashing. He did this repeatedly for about 5 minutes. It was scary, especially since he drove on the wrong side of the road and almost crashed into oncoming and parked cars. He finally stopped, and we all moved on like it didn't happen, though I was very shaken up. As we drove, I realized nobody knew where we were going until we got close. I was nervous because we were in the middle of nowhere. We pulled up to a dark fruit farm. I was actually scared, and so was Andrea. I later found out Andrea had strict parents who told her not to leave the house no matter what. She left because it would be awkward to stay back and be left alone. New M decided not to come because it would be boring. Vicky's children begged her to join us, but I was glad she stayed home to do work. Off topic, Vicky had a puppy that she later told me they locked inside a tiny closet for almost 24 hours. Back to the main story. We stayed out there for about 30 minutes and found nothing but an old treehouse about to collapse. The gift was that Vicky's grandparents paid to get her a new treehouse, and she got to pick where it would go. She picked the middle of the fruit farm and asked if we could drive farther out. Thankfully, her dad said no. I also found out we were in an area where tarantulas, rattlesnakes, and other dangerous animals commonly lurk. We finally got back and watched The Greatest Showman, Vicky's favorite movie at the time. We were given small bowls of popcorn, and when I tried to get more like Andrea, I was told harshly to save some for everyone else. Everyone else had gotten about 2 or more bowls of popcorn. I was so ready to go home but had no way to contact my parents. The movie ended, and we were told to go to bed. When I ran downstairs to bring my bag of clothes upstairs and try to get Wi-Fi to tell my parents to pick me up, New M was at the top of the stairs waiting for me. She told me to hand over my iPad, and I could get it back in the morning. So, I handed it over. I was stuck there for the rest of the night, too scared to ask New M if I could call my parents to leave or stand up to her. So, I went to Vicky's room to sleep. By morning, everyone was very distant toward me because I stayed the night. I got up first, made my bed, and got dressed because I just wanted to leave. Andrea, Vicky, and I headed downstairs once we heard New M wake up. The rule was not to leave your room for breakfast or be downstairs in the morning until New M was downstairs. Andrea, who had stayed the night before, warned me not to leave the room to use the bathroom unless I really had to, otherwise I would get in trouble. We headed downstairs, opened the rest of the presents, and then had breakfast. We all got one pancake each, while Vicky's brothers got 2 pancakes, which were so small they totaled to 1 regular pancake. At this point it was almost noon, so I thought it would be fine to have a soda since it was close to the afternoon. When Andrea saw me get a soda, she also got one. Once we opened the sodas, New M started yelling at us. She wasn't in the same room but yelled, "WHO the heck opened a soda?" She stomped in and snatched our sodas. Andrea looked genuinely scared and said, "You didn't ask if we could have soda?" I didn't think it was a problem. We got scolded by New M, who told us we could have water and milk and needed permission for soda and juice. I can understand needing permission for soda, but apple juice and orange juice? I thought it was ridiculous but didn't argue because I was terrified. We got yelled at, and she left to sit in the dining room. My dad called to tell New M he was on his way, thankfully. New M was talking to Andrea about how Andrea's mom joked about her living there since she was over so often. I wanted her to think I had an amazing time, so I tried to chime in, saying I had a great time and would love to stay again. New M side-eyed me and said, "I wasn't talking to you," then rolled her eyes. I wanted to leave at that moment, but thankfully my dad showed up a few minutes later. Before I left, New M tried to keep my iPad. I asked for it back while my dad was there, and New M went to get it but handed it to my dad, not me. She then said to my dad, "Your daughter drank 5 sodas and ate 3 slices of pizza." My dad wanted to leave because he was getting a weird vibe from New M. We hurried out. My dad handed me back my iPad but scolded me for drinking so much soda. It was the worst birthday party I've ever been to. I'm glad I grew a backbone at the age of 17 so this would never happen again. Plus, I now have a phone with wireless reception, so I can get out of these crazy situations. Overall, I'm glad I'm no longer in contact with that crazy family. Kind of a small one, but lately my dad and older brother have been trying to push the job of making the shopping list onto me. Of course, because I don't know how much they need since I'm the least food-interested person in the house. I need someone's help with making the list. As Dad had gone to bed, my brother helped me. Well, he helped me. He would sit there and tell me which item I needed to check one at a time, and give me a vague or stupid answer as to how much we needed of something. For example, we needed 35 tubs of mint ice cream, or the amount of beer we needed was a fridge, and I was getting annoyed, especially because he was trying to watch a movie at the time, and kept pausing and unpausing it between items. So I had to deal with him always telling me to shut up and wait for the end of the scene, or a good time to pause, which took several minutes per item. For a full shopping list for 3 people and a cat. Did I mention it was like 11:45 p.m. when we started doing this? And this is after he had dragged his feet on helping for 3 days? Eventually, I got sick of it and started writing exactly what he said when it came to his foodstuffs. So we needed an amount of veggie burgers, just guess of tuna. Shut up, this is a good bit of dark cooking chocolate, and look at the silly moggy of butternut squash, and so on. By the time we were done, it was past 2 a.m., and I was knackered, stressed, and satisfied with my work. I took the list upstairs to my dad, left it on his bedside table with a sticky note that said, "If anything looks wrong, just don't get it." In the morning, Dad went to do the shopping. He came back with everything I eat and he eats, but my brother was missing about 85% of his food items. When my brother asked WTF happened, My dad said that he couldn't tell whether we needed to get some things because the amounts of those things seemed unusual or costly, and felt that it was safer if he didn't buy those things. It turns out Dad had been kept awake by my brother's movie for 2.5 hours last night, and was as sick to the back teeth with it as I was. My brother had to walk up to the local shop and buy as many of his things as he could from there. They didn't have everything, out of his own money. He even had to make 2 trips because he couldn't carry everything the first time. It's a mile walk there, meaning he had to walk 4 miles in total to buy his food out of his pocket. Dad wouldn't drive him because he had a long run to do, and I sure as hell wasn't going to help. I was too busy eating my Pringles. That I forgot to put on the list. I'm still going to have to help make the list in future, but when I do, something tells me my 27-year-old brother will help properly next time. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.